Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football.
Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm here with Keith Myers, with Bill Alvstad. Here with Keith Myers. Keith, rack up another win. This looks like it's going to be possibly a special season we got here.
It could be. This was a win against a team that looked really good in week one, and looks like they could be one of the teams competing for Super Bowl berth coming out of the AFC. They're clearly they're clearly a playoff team talent wise, and so for the Seahawks to take care of business and get a win despite some major setbacks and things, then it's a good sign.
It is a good sign, and I do believe, and we'll get into it, obviously all of it, but it looks to me like New England's a top 10 team. Now, I know Seattle is. I know for a fact Seattle is, especially after 2 weeks. I knew that going in. I predicted a 12-4 record. I knew that they were going to be a top 5 team just based on the way the roster was constructed. Didn't know that the offense was going to be special. I thought it was going to be pretty good, but it looks like it's going to be pretty darn special. And then, you take a look at New England. I thought they dropped off a lot. I mean, they just lost a bunch of folks in free agency. They really didn't replace, including their quarterback they had for 20 years, Tom Brady.
Which they did replace, though. I mean,
they did, and I'm shocked.
Any belief that Cam
shocked.
Newton is washed up is...
I have to tell you, Keith,
he's not. He's good.
That was the best... And I haven't watched a bunch of Cam Newton games other than the Seahawks, but that's the best that Cam Newton has looked to me as a pass thrower in a very long time, and against any Seahawk team that we've faced him in the last 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, I mean, he's been battling injuries, whether it was his ankle or his shoulder, and you could tell there were times when you could tell it hurt to throw the football, but he battled through some of that with Carolina, and then, but he's healthy now, and you can tell he's healthy because he is just lasering those balls into tight windows and looked really good as a passer. I would argue that the quarterback change in New England has been an upgrade because
for the last 3 years, yeah,
right. Because I mean, Tom Brady is Tom Brady. He's one of the top 5 greatest quarterbacks of NFL history, no matter how you are going to stack it. But if you watch him this year, both games this year, he is not the Tom Brady who was absolutely dominant a few years ago. Age has started to catch up with him quite a bit. He looked pretty bad in the first game. He looked better this week, but not... He's 43, and he looks like a 43-year-old out there playing. And, Cam Newton looked like the guy who won the MVP award a few years ago. He did. He's back.
He looked really solid.
He's back to being that guy. And so I'd say the Brady to Newton exchange at quarterback has been an upgrade for them, which I'm not talking legacy, right? Because Brady's like an all-timer, and Newton is...
well, I mean, we can't get too far ahead of ourselves either, Keith, in the fact that, quite frankly, we're looking at a pretty poor Seahawks defense overall. Mm-hmm. And so you do have to take that into consideration. How far back are the Seahawks on defense, given the performances that we've seen on the 2 quarterbacks that have faced them? Now, granted, they're 2 of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league, but... nonetheless, we'll talk about the stats in a while.
How much of the Seahawks defense woes are based on the fact they've played 2 really good offensive teams, and how much of it is just there's some problems, especially on the defensive line, the ones that we knew of. I mean, these aren't surprises, right?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it all. So let's go into it. Let's talk about the New England game in just a bit. Let's just talk about stuff around the team a little bit. Right now, yesterday after game, a day after the game, word came down that we lost Bruce Irvin and Marquise Blair for the year with ACL injuries that require surgery. That's a tough blow to a defense that was, I think, really kind of counting on Marquise Blair even more so than Irvin to fill a unique role in the team. And then, of course, Bruce Irvin at the Sam linebacker and being able to rush the passer. That is certainly a position that the team is weak on to begin with. And then to lose Bruce Irvin is something that's going to hurt a little bit. And the question becomes right away, how does the team address replacing those two particular players?
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely concerning. It was a bigger deal this week as far as losing Blair than it will be in other games because it happened immediately after Quandre Diggs had been ejected from the game for a helmet-to-helmet hit, which I don't think. Like, it was definitely a penalty. It deserved the 15 yards. I agree. I don't believe it was
automatic
ejection worthy. I think that if you look, he tries to lead with his shoulder. The receiver came down into the hit. I mean, there's definitely some things there. I'm not saying it wasn't a penalty. It was 15 yards, personal foul, fine. But it's not a. I don't believe it was ejection worthy. Wasn't my decision, obviously, because he was ejected. But losing both the starting free safety and the primary backup / nickel back, all within a couple minutes of each other, meant that basically they were really hurting at safety. So now
it threw Adams into coverage more so than they probably wanted him in coverage. Yeah. And it showed. I mean, he really kind of struggled a little bit in that role without kind of preparing for that role all week. But now going forward, it looks like Amadi is in line to take the Blair snaps. I think that makes the most sense given what we have currently on the roster.
And you're going to see
out and making moves.
You're going to see Lano Hill too. I mean, Lano Hill's been playing these first 2 weeks, and he played actually. I think one of the things that people aren't recognizing is that he played pretty dang well in that free safety slot, even though he's like the third string free safety.
Yeah. And he's been in the defense for a while.
Yep.
And, he's earned his minutes and he's going to get them now. Bruce Irvin, it sounds like the coach is ready to go with Brooks and Wright and Wagner there, and Cody Barton's able to come in.
This is where the depth at linebacker is going to pay off because we talked about this, in the lead up to the season. This is a team with 5 linebackers that are good enough to start. And you only need 3 starting linebackers. So Irvin gets hurt, goes out. Jordan Brooks, their first round pick, who's probably the most athletic of the group at this point in their careers, now gets a chance to play. And in for most teams in any other year, Brooks would have started from day one because they're like, okay, yeah, he might make more mistakes, but we've got to get this guy ready. We've got to get him up to speed because he has the potential to be a special player, and we are going to need that. But the Seahawks, feeling like they were they have an opportunity to be great this year, wanted to go with veterans, didn't want rookie mistakes to cost them a game, so they played Irvin and they let Brooks mature a little bit. He's only played 15 defensive snaps. But he now
if there's ever a year to throw a guy in, this would be it. I know that they want to win now, and I get that, but he's surrounded by so much talent. Even though the defense is struggling, there's talent immediately around him that is going to be able to help him.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be
this role.
He's going to be surrounded with KJ and Wagner at linebacker, and he's got Adams at strong safety. Right?
Exactly.
You could not ask for a better group of guys to put around a rookie linebacker. just in pure experience and talent and everything. I mean, this is
Absolutely.
a great opportunity and situation for him. And
that's why I don't feel so bad about the Irvin thing. I feel really bad for Irvin himself. Absolutely. And the team can definitely use that. But this is a great opportunity for Brooks in a role I think he will thrive in. Ultimately, it's just going to take a few games for him to get completely comfortable out there. He may not get comfortable, all year, but at least he's going to be able to increase that play speed in the next 3 or 4 games. And it'll eventually, I think, pay huge dividends for the Seahawks.
And this is also a thing that when you look at the depth and whatever, if something else happens. I mean, Cody Barton started a bunch of games last year, had a little, it was a little rough at the beginning, but definitely improved with playing time. He's still sitting there. He's now the primary backup at all 3 positions. Although I think
who's that? Cody Barton?
Yeah. I think if Wagner missed considerable time, I think they'd move Brooks inside and play Barton at the Sam. But still, I mean, you've got a starting caliber linebacker still on the bench, backing up all the other 3 guys, and so they're still in great shape at linebacker. And I agree. I feel terrible for Irvin. He signed a 1-year deal, $5.5 million, with the idea that he would come in, he would get a chance to come home to Seattle and play in the defense that really made him look the best, and maybe cash in next year. And now instead he's going to be injured, trying to get back to the point where he can pass a physical just to get signed in time for training camp and all of that. It's just a rough spot for him. Should have been a bounce back year for him, and instead now he's heading to injured reserve and massive surgery and all that kind of stuff.
So let's finish up with some roster moves, and then we'll talk about the game for a little bit, because it was awfully fun. So I don't want to just completely dismiss it. They're protecting Stefan Sullivan on the practice squad, so they're going to protect him. He's not promoted to the 53 yet, but he's protected, so no other teams can go and poach him off the practice squad this week. That's an interesting move, given the fact that Phillip Dorsett went to IR for at least 3 weeks today. That was a move that the team just announced right before we pushed the record button, and so those 2 moves are somewhat interesting. Although we both realized, I think at this point, that Phillip Dorsett wasn't going to be ready to play. He had this foot thing going on. Apparently he's had this foot thing for a long time. The only people that didn't know he didn't have the foot thing were the Seahawks, which pulls into question what's going on with the medical part of the front office.
I think because of
evaluates
COVID,
players.
I think because of COVID, there was limited.
Yeah, but shouldn't that be on the disclosure form? Okay, let me list out all your injuries. Right?
Yeah, well, no, it should be part of the disclosure
so
form. And so if the team if this becomes a thing and he never plays all year, I think that the team can go after his signing bonus or some of his salary and that kind of stuff.
It's not a good look for Phillip Dorsett.
It's really
I'll
not.
just be honest.
The thing is, he came out early in camp and practiced and looked really good, right?
Yes.
So I think there was some belief that the injury that's kind of been nagging back when he was with the Patriots was gone, but then it flared back up, and now it's a thing, and now he hasn't played these first 2 weeks. Now he's headed to IR, so it's going to be a minimum of 5 games.
If you count the 3 that he's going to be gone plus the bye, and then he's probably got a practice week.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're talking a minimum of 5 weeks, maybe 7 weeks into the season before they get him back and all of that. It's
insurance right now.
It's unfortunate because I think they really wanted they really had a role in mind for him, especially when they cut Paul Richardson. Luckily for the team, David Moore has stepped up and played well. He has looked like a guy who, I mean, we knew the talent was there the last couple of years, but he would disappear for long stretches and just, it's like he wasn't even out there, but he was. And so far, it looks like he's stepped up and has improved, and they're going to get more consistent production out of him. We're only 2 weeks in,
The whole
but so
offense
far,
is crazy.
yeah.
I mean, it's in beyond midseason form. Let's talk all about it. But let's get to these other things first. So, Coach said that Alton Robinson obviously would get playing time this week. He'll be active. That's straight out of Coach Carroll's press conference yesterday.
Mm-hmm. About time.
That's and we both have said that he should have been active, given the glowing remarks that he had all not preseason, but all training camp. Looked like he was going to be able to step in and make a contribution, especially with Darrell Taylor, another player the Seahawks have some questionable decision on regarding injury. But with Darrell Taylor now on injured reserve, Alton Robinson looked to get those snaps, and so far it's been nothing. So now, given the injuries and the lack of production, it's time for Alton Robinson to show up. It really is.
Yeah,
we need him.
And it's not, I mean, I'm looking at this and I go, okay, I get the team wanting to, play veterans and avoid, rookie mistakes and all of that. But when guys like DeMonte Moore are getting major playing time, he was one of the, in that key series at the end of the game, right? When the Patriots had a chance to drive down and win, DeMonte Moore was the guy playing that rush inside. That's not a good look for Seattle's defense to have a guy that was available a week before training camp ended. He was just
well,
out
it's not
there.
like he's played bad. I mean, check this out. DeMonte Moore has a pass rush win rate, which is beating his man that he's lined up with in under 2.5 seconds or less, 38%, which is currently fourth in the NFL. So
That's a really
he's taking
small
advantage
sample
of
size,
this.
though.
Yeah, but it is a small sample size. But nonetheless, with the snaps that he is getting, he's taking advantage of those. And that's all you can ask for a guy like that. So I don't want to throw him too far.
No, true, but I'm just saying, like, he isn't starter caliber talent.
No,
We can all agree
well,
on
neither
that,
is
right?
neither is Benson Mayowa. Let's
True.
talk about Benson Mayowa. Benson Mayowa took 90% of the snaps and had zero pass rush win rate, zero pressures, zero quarterback hits.
He's also
zero
a guy that
sacks.
he shouldn't be taking 90% of the snaps.
Exactly, that's my point.
He should be taking 30 to 35% of the snaps. And
When you're not getting production out of your primary starting Leo, like nothing. I mean, he had the sack against Ryan, which was awesome, but nothing else. So okay.
It's not like he's giving the team less than they got last year out of Ezekiel Ansah. Because
speaking of which, he signed with the 49ers, who are decimated.
Oh God,
we can talk about that too.
They are in
We'll talk about that. So, okay. And the team promoted Lyndon Stevens, their nickel corner, off the practice squad, had a great camp. Really their only other true slot corner in camp this year, went to the practice squad after being cut, now back onto the 53, given the situation with Marquise Blair. And then Kyle Fuller came off of the NFL suspension list for PED. He's a guard center, was in camp as kind of a third string guy. Now the team needs to make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, the roster is 3 players short of being full right now, this very second. Kyle Fuller would be one that they could promote and put on the active, or they can cut him. The chances are, for me,
they're going to cut him.
Coming out of camp, I thought they were going to cut him, and then he got suspended, and now it saved him for a couple of weeks. They held on to that, given the fact that anything can happen in the NFL,
and they don't have to pay him. He doesn't count against the cap,
right?
All that kind of
so
stuff.
I would imagine he gets cut, but that leaves 3 holes. When you take a look at Irvin, I'm counting this. You take a look at Irvin, you take a look at Blair, and you take a look at what's the other player that we're down?
Dorsett.
And now we've got 3 holes. You've just promoted Lyndon Stevens.
That gives you 2.
There's 2 left.
Mm-hmm.
They protected Sullivan, didn't add him. So we still have 2 openings left.
Yeah, but the thing about protecting him is it might be that they plan on bringing him up a week from now, but for this week they're going to bring up someone else because they need they needed someone specific on defense, right? And then, but it's a 1 week thing, and then you bring Sullivan up to replace Dorsett a week from now. So that's kind of situation that would go there. They have 2 spots left because Stevens is coming up. The other player that what I've seen is it's pretty much just assumed he's going to be activated off the practice squad would be Shakim Griffin, who gives you linebacker, special teams, and pass rush ability. Granted, he would be backup and kind of buried on the bench a little bit, but he does provide similar role skill set that Bruce Irvin did. So it would kind of make sense for him to come up and become Jordan Brooks's, kind of backup and insurance. So, you get him, and you needed a nickel corner after Blair. They got Stevens, and then you're going to need, a wide receiver to replace Dorsett. And maybe they do that and they bring Sullivan up, or maybe they don't. And, they wait a week to do that and they bring up someone else. But I don't think that, Kyle Fuller, I guess, would be, he gets activated and has a spot because of the Dorsett decision hasn't been made yet as far as who's going to replace him. But the likelihood that he sticks on the roster more than a couple of days here, I think, is pretty low.
Interesting. All right. Let's talk about the game. What a crazy game. So it seemed like everything was going just really swell, except for the leadoff mistake. And then it seemed like we were just kind of we went into halftime tied, and then it seemed like we were just going to be able to kind of take care of business in the second half. But Cam Newton happened. Mm-hmm. And but so did Russell Wilson. I mean, it was a great battle of quarterbacks in this game. Russell Wilson ended up 21 of 28 for 288 yards and 5 touchdowns. And the only interception he had was not his fault. No, it bounced
right off
it did.
Greg Olson's hands, which, it's not like he's throwing to, some no-name, player or whatever.
Right.
We're talking about a guy who's
Hall of Famer.
Yeah, almost certainly, because, he was an All-Pro a couple of years. He's been a Pro Bowler forever. You just don't expect that guy to make that mistake, but that's football. It bounced right off his hands, right into a defensive player's hands, and
43-yard pick six.
Yep, and the Seahawks are down 7-0 instantly.
Yeah, instantly, right on the first drive, second play or whatever. I mean, it's just one of those things too that now, given the fact that we saw Russell Wilson's day or night, you just know that we were probably going to open up with a touchdown drive there, or at least 3 points, and it would have just completely changed the whole game. But anyway,
I don't think honestly, like, you look at what happened after that. The Seahawks got the ball back after, from off the kickoff, and Wilson drove him down for a touchdown and tied it up.
Lockett. Yeah, threw to Lockett in the back of the end zone on a really nice sidearm swing out. I mean, that was a great play. Yeah. That was an underrated pass by Russell Wilson.
Oh, yeah, because if you look, there was a guy right there in the passing lane. He had to drop down and go completely sidearm in order to get it over to him. And he did, and it was accurate, and it was a touchdown, and it was just lovely.
Yeah, well, just like every other friggin' throw. I mean, out of all the touchdowns, so check it out. It's like you have the Lockett touchdown, and then you had that Metcalf epic showdown with Gilmore, right? The best, the NFL player of the year last year, defensive player of the year. And he had just a really nice game against him. It was solid. It wasn't like spectacular special, but he was facing off against one of the most physical corners in the game. And Metcalf is one of the most physical wide receivers. I almost want to watch the All-22 film just to watch that matchup all game, because it wasn't just the pass catching. Mm-hmm. It was the blocking and the after the catch, the extra that DK Metcalf was given to Gilmore, and that sideline thing where Gilmore drug Metcalf into the Seahawks bench after he felt like he was being blocked too long after the whistle. Yeah, just plays like that tell you everything you need to know about the steps that Metcalf has taken this year to be a premier number one wide receiver in the NFL. And I am so jacked about it. I mean, man.
So we talked about in the lead up to the game that Bill Belichick, his teams, they pick something that you do well offensively, and they take it away from you. That's the calling card.
We talked about that, yeah.
And we didn't know what it was going to be, but we knew they were going to take something away from Seattle that Seattle wanted, and then force the rest of it, the rest of the offense to beat you. And then also, if you're expecting to be able to, utilize whatever that item is, it just kind of throws an inefficiency in at you. Based on what we saw, what they wanted to take away from Seattle was DK Metcalf. They put their best defensive player, the reigning defensive player of the year, on Metcalf for 87% of Metcalf snaps.
Yeah. Hadn't allowed a touchdown, for ages.
Yep.
And a passer rating that was off the charts and just crazy. And then Metcalf showed up.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, the end result was 4 receptions, 92 yards, and a touchdown, which doesn't sound like, I mean, it's definitely, it's very good, but it doesn't sound like, like he dominated or anything like that. But if you saw that 54-yard TD where it was tight coverage and Wilson just dropped the ball in there perfectly, and
Metcalf shielded with his body,
and then caught the ball through contact, kept his balance, left Gilmore sitting there on the ground, and just walked into the end zone.
Stiff arm into the ground, and backed into the end zone.
Yep.
And that was beautiful.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful play, and it was all the more special when you knew the player that Metcalf did it against.
Mm-hmm.
That guy wasn't going to back down from anybody. I mean, Gilmore's a great player. He's got a lot of pride, and he wanted to be as physical as he could, physical as Richard Sherman was in his best day. Right? This is that matchup, and Metcalf got every bit of Gilmore on this day.
Metcalf won that matchup, so they wanted. I mean, because they could have put Gilmore on anyone. They could have put him on Lockett and tried to take Lockett away from Seattle. They could have schemed, left everyone kind of on an island a little bit and tried to scheme and take, Chris Carson and the running game away. But they didn't. They tried to take DK Metcalf away from Seattle, and he still went for 92 yards and a touchdown. And that had a lot to do with the reason why the Seahawks came away with the W on here. Because
totally, and it's great news for Seattle,
yeah,
and it's bad news for everybody else.
Because how many teams have a guy that you can put on Metcalf and shut him down?
Well, we just found out.
Yeah, because
there's none. I mean, DK Metcalf is going to win virtually every matchup that he wants to win. He will win. So because that's how good he is.
You either have to double team him on every play,
yes,
or he's going to hurt you. The only other matchup that where we need to watch and see that maybe there's someone who might be Patrick Peterson and the Arizona Cardinals, and we'll see. Peterson's got more speed than Gilmore, but Gilmore is much more physical. So it's just really difficult to describe just how big it was that Metcalf was able to take on that matchup and win.
And like I said, it just wasn't the catches. It was the physical nature in which Metcalf went at Gilmore on every play, blocking plays, run plays, where he blocked him, out of the way, where he, after the catch, turned and just faced him and ran him down and then kept plowing him backwards. It was awesome. So, and then David Moore is you mentioned him earlier. He's having a great season so far. It's only 2 games, but good signs for David Moore. That catch where he backed into the end zone there, right off touchdown over the pylon, was special. It really was.
It was an incredible throw into the tiniest window by Russell Wilson, but for Moore to get control of it, not bobble it at all.
Tight coverage again.
Yeah, very tight coverage, and get that second foot down as he's falling down. That was great. I mean, it was just fantastic. So
And Freddie Swain had a wide open touchdown where he ran in from 20 yards out. That was a great scheme play, by the way, that pulled the entire defense of New England to the left, and Swain crossed over the right side of the defense and
so that was
that play.
And that was a great play design because you had Tyler Lockett line up at tailback, and so you have
that's right.
You have half of the Patriots, back seven covering as if there's three wide receivers on that side, and the other half of the back seven covering as if there's two receivers on that side, because some of them accounted for Lockett and some of them didn't. Like they thought they counted him as a running back, and that's what created that situation for Swain to be wide open, just completely uncovered, easy, pitch and catch for Wilson to a wide open Swain, and then Swain just had to run it in from there. But
and showed good speed doing it too, by the way.
Yep, just a fantastic play design. Got to give Shoddy a ton of credit for that one, because it's something that you wouldn't have expected. It's not on, obviously because it's no preseason. There's no film on that kind of stuff, and the Patriots just didn't know how to handle it. Right? They just didn't know what to do.
It would have been, to me, I would have called timeout, but because there's miscommunication going on at the line of scrimmage before the play is snapped, and then if I was the linebacker, I would have called a timeout in that situation. But and then the last touchdown I thought was the crowning achievement on Wilson's day was that throw to Carson out of the backfield. A nice looping tight spiral right over his shoulder in the end zone for the TD. That's a special connection developing right now between Carson and Wilson.
Carson has 3 receiving touchdowns in 2 weeks. He is a power running back that you want running people over between the tackles, right? And yet here he is with 3 receiving touchdowns out of the backfield. That has got to be giving defensive coordinators a lot of heartburn, because just figuring out how to account for that. If your cues are about him coming up the middle and running people over, if that's what you're cueing on, if you're a linebacker, and then you see Wilson drop back and you got to pick up the coverage, and for Carson to be that good in his routes and in his receiving and all of that, it's just making life really hard for opposing linebackers to know what to do.
Well, and you take a look at Wilson, Keith. He's just making all the right decisions right now.
Oh, he is.
There's not very many throws that are going into the wrong spots. Now, you can take a look at that 3rd and 1 long throw to Lockett being pretty much the only mistake of the game. It came in a bad time where they were trying to close out, 2 minutes left in the game. All you need to do is pick up that first down, and it's pretty much over.
Yeah, but you look at what Wilson saw. He saw one-on-one coverage.
Yeah, but that play was kind of screwed up from the very beginning.
It was, because it was a terrible snap. But he saw
got them on their heels right away.
Yeah, he had one-on-one coverage on that side, and he had Lockett inside, so there was so much space between Lockett and the sideline for Wilson to drop the ball into. I don't necessarily have a decision or a problem with the decision. I mean, obviously it would have been better had he thrown it about a foot shorter, and then, Lockett would have caught it and the game would have been over right there. But you look at the reads of what Wilson made, and I hated the play call at the time, but then I went back and rewatched it, and he had his pre-snap read was that Lockett's going to be open out there. And when that snap ended up 2 yards to his right, and he had to go over and grab it, and didn't have time to collect the ball and survey the field. He had to go make sure that the snap didn't get by him, and was not looking at the defense because he was trying to account for the bad snap. He picks his head up and verifies that his pre-snap read was right, that the safety wasn't going to be over there, and he let the ball fly because that's what he had time for. A good snap there, and he may have,
because that was tight coverage.
It was, but he knew he had single coverage with a lot of real estate over there for Lockett to use. But I think, a good snap, and he finds a slant route or an out route, something that's going to get them 4 yards and a first down, and the game's going to be over.
Or he could have run it. I mean,
yeah,
he could have pulled it down and ran that, So it's a tough deal, especially given the fact that we had gained 140 yards or whatever on the ground at that point in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, last week it worked out great. We scored on the DK Metcalf situation. But this week, it could have cost us. I mean, and it's interesting because it didn't feel like the game was in jeopardy until that moment. And then you realize that New England was going to get the ball back, and Cam Newton has been really good. And sure enough, our defense gave up all that real estate until the 1 yard line, and they couldn't punch it in. And it was basically heroic play by Wagner, Hill, and Collier that prevented Cam Newton from going in from the 1 yard line. He'd been successful already 2 times. I was dreading that play, honestly. I thought for sure
it's hard to stop Cam from getting 1 yard.
He'd like been 19 rushes from the one and never had a loss like that.
Yeah, because when you set it up, right, he's his size and running power and all of that, and then the fact that he can just take the ball and read it and go. There's no handoff happening. There's an extra blocker because he's the guy that's going to handle it. You pretty much can't stop him from gaining 1 yard unless you absolutely 100% sell out.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And what we saw earlier was the team sell out to stop that, and he took that step forward and then just stopped and threw the ball to the fullback who was wide open for
absolutely.
Because if you're going to
pick your poison, right?
Yeah, and so as a team, you were, what are you going to do there? And the team sold out again to stop Newton because you were like, okay, they're not going to throw it twice from that spot, and they guessed right, and it was
they did guess right,
and even guessing right. And selling
it was
out
Bobby Wagner that made that call.
Yeah. Even guessing right and all of that doesn't guarantee you're stopping Cam Newton from gaining a yard. Right?
He could have easily bounced that thing outside and been home.
But Collier penetrated through, and Cam recognized that he was going to get that Collier was there on, low, and he went up, tried to go over the top of Collier,
and got clipped,
and got
his ankles clipped.
Got his ankles clipped by Hill, and Wagner came in and finished him off, and that was it. Seahawks win. But it was 2 very unlikely heroes with Collier and Hill that were the guys that really made that play happen, and thankfully. Absolutely. But right? that's how crazy. That's how close this game was. I mean, it really came down to that. And it just goes to show you, I know the Patriots are kind of this hated team because they've been good for so long and because they cheat constantly and all of that. But when was the last time that these 2 teams played and it wasn't fun?
Well, I mean, it's been a 1-score game at the 1 or 2 yard line the last 3 times we've played, including the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And you go back to, I was thinking about this because, the year that the Seahawks went 2-14 and ended up with the 2nd overall pick in the draft, the team that went 1-15 and got the 1st overall pick was the Patriots. So they were both terrible at the same time as well.
That's funny. So this game's was a lot more balanced on the offense this week. Carson had 17 rushes, 72 yards. I mentioned earlier the team had 140 or something overall yards. Wilson had 30 yards or 21 yards on a carry.
39 yards total.
They look so efficient. In 2 games. Wilson has 82.5% completion percentage, 9 touchdowns, 9.7 yards per attempt, 11 incompletions. So he's got almost more touchdowns than he has incompletions. And that 1 interception, again, that wasn't his fault. It's just crazy. And then I noticed there was a couple of players that are playing really well. and one of them is Damien Lewis, which I think is just really understated right now because he plays right guard. But he's one of the best right guards in the game right now, according to Pro Football Focus. He's the third best running guard in the NFL.
He's had some bad penalties, and people are going to focus on that. But he's also a rookie, and you got to give a rookie time to develop.
He's the third highest graded offensive rookie overall.
When the team needs to run, when they need yards, they run right every single time. Go back and watch it. When they need yards on the ground.
Not over Dwayne Brown.
No. They run right every single time when it's 3rd and 1 and they run the ball. Go look at the tape. They run behind Damien Lewis. And that right there by itself is huge, that they have that much faith in that rookie that when they need a play, 1 yard, whatever, they run behind their rookie and they know they're going to get it.
So right now, overall, we're 7th in rushing in DVOA rankings. We haven't been running the ball a lot, but when we do run, we're doing it successfully. A pass offense, obviously, number 1. Pass defense, 29th. Rush defense, 5th. We're 2nd overall in DVOA rankings. It's been a while since we've been up there that high. Mm-hmm. Feels kind of good. I noticed the all of the the team rankings come out today, like ESPN does their weekly update, etc. And we're steadily moving up. I think we're 2nd or 3rd on almost most of the primary team rankings out there.
Somewhere between 1 and 3 on all the power rankings everywhere.
Yes, we're legit. And we talked about that before the season. We knew our offense was going to be good. Like I said early on in the show, didn't know it was going to be so special so quickly. It's interesting to me how I think it's the offensive line, Keith.
It is
that is allowing Wilson to be comfortable. Yep. And when Wilson's comfortable, it's over.
So they've given up 5 sacks in 2 games, which doesn't sound like they're doing great. I get that. I hear that. I see that. And yes, there are times when free blockers come and he's running for his life and all of that. But compare the pressure stats this year versus last year versus the year before. He is having more time. He's getting better blocking. It's been outstanding. And a lot of it, Dwayne Brown is healthy, and you can tell. Last year he had that pec injury it was a bicep injury that really hurt him, and you could tell. And this year he doesn't have that. He's healthy. He's feeling good, and Wilson trusts him, and he's not worrying about it. And Shell on the other side, for the most part, is doing really well in pass blocking, whereas Ifedi was useless.
Ifedi had a great game at guard for Chicago, by the way.
He did. I kept telling, how many times did I say he is a guard?
The entire time, like 4 years worth.
He needs to be playing guard. Play him at guard and you use his talents. And he can be really, really special. But they played him at tackle, where his feet were way too slow and he was never going to be good. Chicago moves him to guard, and guess what? He looks really good at guard.
Yeah, he's the 3rd ranked guard overall.
I'm not surprised. And good for him. You know what I mean? Like we've spent a lot of time, on this show and just as Seahawks fans hating on Jermaine Ifedi over the last few years, but good for him to go out and perform and play well. I'm really ecstatic for him. He's finally been put in a situation where a team is using his talents appropriately, and he is taking advantage of that situation completely. It's amazing. It's awesome. And he deserves all the success. So I'm very happy for him.
So agree or disagree? The Seahawks team's ceiling rests with its defensive line.
It does. That's right now. It's what's holding them back.
Literally, we have our best Super Bowl opportunity. I know it's only 2 games in, but this is our best Super Bowl opportunity we've had since 2015. And we have this defensive line. And we knew it. We knew it in the offseason. We knew it on the last snap of the last game of the last playoffs in 2020, January. Mm-hmm. We knew that this was going to be needing to be addressed. And here we are. Second game is done. We know what we have. We know what we are. We know what we lack. Here's the Super Bowl sitting right in front of us for the taking. Anybody can take it. Seahawks are primed, ready. Wilson's going to have an MVP level year. It just is going to happen. And then we've got this defense that is just maybe the Achilles heel for this whole thing.
Well, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, can the team fix this? I think Alton Robinson has an opportunity to have a big impact and really help things out. One of the big problems that the team has right now is that Jerron Reed just hasn't been good. And they paid him like $10.5 million to come back.
He was getting held pretty darn good against New England.
He was.
In the middle there.
But I'm just saying, like, they paid him a lot to come in and hope that he could return back close to his 2018 level, where he had 10.5 sacks and looked great. And not what he played last year when he had the suspension and then never really got back into the swing of things and everything. But he overall has not been good. He has not really been impactful at any moment in any game. It's only 2 games, but in any moment in either game. And yes, he was getting held, so that stopped him, from doing that a little bit. And of course, those holds never get called.
Do you know who's playing well? Brian Monet.
Brian Monet actually has played pretty well against the run.
He's he's also ranked 8th in the entire NFL in pass rush win rate for a defensive tackle.
See, I don't buy that because I don't see him. Okay, he might win against the guard, but he's so slow, he's not putting any pressure on the quarterback.
I agree. We're still not affecting the quarterback.
Yeah, so to me, that doesn't mean that's meaningless.
Our pressure rate overall is 17.5% after 2 games, ranks 29th in the NFL.
God, that's awful. I think Alton Robinson has a chance to greatly impact that. Hopefully, Taylor gets back and has an opportunity to come in and do that. Losing Shakim Griffin to injury has been kind of a
game time decision, by the way, according to Pete Carroll.
Kind of an understated problem for this team. So they're down Irvin, they're down Green, they're down Taylor. This team desperately needs a pass rusher.
It's interesting, Keith, because I totally agree with everything you've just said, but it's interesting because we've been ahead in games, from the first quarter on that we've played so far, and it puts your defense in an interesting situation where teams are then going away from their run and throwing the ball all over. I mean, Seattle's defense is surrendering 485 yards a game, ranks 32nd. Versus New England, we had 5 quarterback hits on 48 dropbacks. 2 of those were by Adams. 1 was by Wagner. So our defensive line, Irvin and Tremonte Moore, had 1 each. And the sack was by Adams. So we're literally getting nothing from our defensive line on pass pressure. And so something's got to give. I think the Alton Robinson thing I thought should have happened right away. Remember the first year that Ford was on the team, Keith, and
yes.
they practice squad him, and then they put him on the roster, but then didn't play him for like 4 or 5 weeks, and he's just sitting there.
And then he comes in for the last 6 games
completely
and
blows
very,
it up.
Very
game, right?
good, yeah.
And so I'm hoping the same thing is going on with Alton Robinson. It's like all of a sudden he's put into the fire, and is the kid going to respond? And my hope is that he's just better than everybody else on the field, just like he was in practice. And I don't understand sometimes how stubborn Pete Carroll can be about these sorts of things. For God's sakes, he's just a pass rusher. We're not asking him to diagnose defenses or drop back into coverage necessarily 100% of the time. We're asking him to come in for 15 snaps, and in those 15 snaps, we're asking him to unleash himself onto the quarterback. That is his job. That's his only job. That requires physical talent.
And it's something that he's good at.
And he's something he's good at. Let's just go with that. Let's just don't make it complicated. Just unleash the kid and let him use his physical gifts to bring down a quarterback or two. So
one of the things coming out of training or out of, you can call it training camp. It wasn't really, there's no preseason. And even after week 1, because, Gurley had some big yards early on in that game before the Seahawks offense forced Matt Ryan to throw every down. But there was some concern about the pass defense. Cam Newton, 11 rushes for 47 yards, was the only effective runner.
Everyone else had 20 yards total.
Yeah.
Combined.
20 combined with Newton, 25 carries for 67 yards. That's 2.5 yards a carry. Just the running backs themselves, it was 14 carries for 20 yards. A little over.
Anthony Rush that came in off the practice squad did a very effective job in 15 snaps. I'm anxious to see what else he can do in there.
Yeah. So I've been, I was happy to see that. And to me, that is what their defensive tackles are for. Brian Monet, I know you're saying he beats guards and stuff, but he's so slow he doesn't affect the quarterback. What he does do is
that's not his job.
He defends the run really well.
Yes, right.
Poona Ford defends the run really well. And
Anthony Rush is 350 pounds. I mean, I don't think we're going to have a problem in the middle now, defending the run. I think on the edges, we're suspect on outside zone runs, and then our pass rush. I mean, we just need to figure that out. And we can't blitz all the time. We saw kind of what happens to a player like Adams when you blitz him all the time and then ask him also to drop back into coverage too. He's spread so far out that sometimes you don't do an effective job on both.
They were asking
he had a rating of 47 point something from Pro Football Focus.
And I don't care
about that. And he gave
up
tons of yards and coverage.
He did. But you know what he didn't give up? Touchdowns. He gave up the longest play of Julian Edelman's career or something like that.
That was a fantastic throw, I got to say.
That was a fantastic catch on top of it. But you look at what happens, right? Edelman is not a guy that goes deep. He never goes deep. He's always going across the field, always on the inside, all of that. When he cut in, Adams broke on the route and came up. And then Edelman broke back up and caught Adams out of position. But you talk about that's a one play in a season kind of move for Julian Edelman. He's not going to do that. And so I don't really have a problem with it. If Diggs had been in there at free safety, it might not have mattered because now you've got your Pro Bowl free safety to clean up the mistake. And they didn't have that. So whatever. I'm really not that concerned about Adams. He gave up a couple
I'm not concerned about Adams.
Yeah, I mean, he did give up a couple of receptions.
I'm just more concerned. Okay. Here's what I'm concerned about. I'm more concerned with Ken Norton Jr. And his ability to put together a game plan. Now, I realize we're 2-0. And we've done enough to win games. But at some point, our defense is going to bite us. And we are going to give out on some of these things. I mean, excuse me. We saw it with both Atlanta and New England. Both of those offenses can hang with Seattle, if given enough opportunities. And Seattle's not going to win every single offensive possession. We're not going to score every single time, and so... when you allow teams to hang around, it's tough. Yeah, those are very good offensive teams, no doubt. Some of the best we're going to face all year.
Yeah.
If you take a look at the schedule,
those two in Arizona are really the only ones there's just not, they're not going to be facing
this Dallas
that level.
Team coming up, we're going to talk about that in a minute, but this Dallas team could come in and put up some yards and points. Yeah. In fact, I expect them to actually, given our defense, but we'll talk about that. Let's talk about the NFC West really quick first.
Okay.
And injuries in general.
The NFC West as a whole is 7-1.
which is crazy.
And the one loss is the 49ers losing to Arizona. So one of those teams had to lose, right? Because they're playing each other. So 7-1, the best possible record that the division could have at this point is what they have.
Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, you take a look at Arizona, they look good. And we talked about this, that they could come in and have a year where they could put it all together and end up with 9 wins. I think that's totally doable for them, if not more. They won 30-15 against Washington. Obviously, Washington's a bottom 5 team in the NFL, but they did what they needed to do. Kyler Murray looks great. He runs, he scores. He has 21 carries and 158 yards in the first 2 games and 3 TDs. I mean, Kyler Murray's legit, and their defense is improving. So I look for Arizona to keep winning. They have a favorable schedule. So I would imagine they're going to keep winning.
Their depth is pretty bad. So yeah. I actually kind of expect Arizona to fade down the stretch a little bit. Attrition happens in the NFL, right? Everyone deals with injuries. The Seahawks have, 2 of their, top 11 or top 12 defensive players that they now have to replace, right? That kind of stuff happens to every team. I don't see the level of talent on the roster in Arizona to overcome that. But right now, they're doing well, and I like what they're doing on offense.
Every year, there's a team that seems to be stricken, and this year, that team is San Francisco. And I hate injuries. I'm not going to sit here and say anything bad about any injured player ever. It's just a very difficult situation. They've got a lot to overcome. It is going to be very interesting for them. Nick Bosa and Solomon Thomas are out for the year with ACLs. Garoppolo's got a high ankle. He's out at least a game. Could be longer. Those sorts of things sometimes can take 3 or 4 weeks.
A high ankle sprain typically is 6 weeks, but we're talking about a quarterback, and especially
they came out and said that it's less serious than they originally thought.
We're also talking about a quarterback who is kind of statuesque in his mobility,
and injury prone apparently,
and so therefore he's not a guy that because if Wilson has a high ankle sprain and it limits his mobility, that's a big deal, right? Because his mobility and his ability to buy time and do those things is part of what makes Wilson great. Not good, great. Garoppolo doesn't have that talent. He doesn't have the ability to do the things that Russell Wilson does. He's more of a statue, pocket passer, and so a high ankle sprain is not going to be as big of a deal for him. We're not going to see as big of a drop-off, but it is typically a 6-week injury, and so he won't be completely healthy for a while.
So I think the bigger injury concern for them, at least on the offensive side of the ball, is Raheem Mostert.
Their best running back.
Mild MCL sprain, quote unquote, but he's out for at least a few games. Could be half the year, depending on the severity of this thing.
6 to 8 weeks.
If you ever saw Mostert run this last week, where he scored from like 75 yards out, and then the series later he scored again from 75 yards out. I kid you not, on the same play against the Jets. But they called it back on a penalty. He's the real deal. Like, he's legit one of the fastest guys in the NFL, speed wise. Like, if you clock him, he runs at like 22, 23 miles an hour. It's crazy.
Yeah, he's a guy like Kamara is in New Orleans. He's that guy that nobody really gave a lot of thought to because he's a little too small and whatever. And sure, he's fast, but can you play running back and be that size? And the truth is, yes. Kamara proved it for them. You've got the guy, the undrafted guy in Denver, who is not playing this year because of injury, but he's been doing the same thing. And, Mostert's been great for San Francisco. To lose him, it hurts because he gives them that big play threat that,
yes.
He's a game changer. Every once in a while, he's just going to take a ball and you look at the defense and you go, okay, it's a 6-yard gain, and he makes one cut, and instead of a 6-yard gain, it's a 60-yard touchdown. And he's got the kind of electricity that can do that. And to lose him, that's going to hurt. Garoppolo, it hurts to lose your quarterback, but
yeah. Well, and they lost Sherman already, and
yep.
It'll be interesting to see how they respond because, a team is only so deep and then the wheels just start coming off. So we'll see how that affects them in this very competitive division.
Mm-hmm.
I think long term that we might have some issues with San Francisco, which is good news for the Seahawks. I mean, the Seahawks as a team, you need to be able to take advantage of any opportunity that comes up. And this is just one of those deals.
The Seahawks don't play San Francisco. Both the games against San Francisco are later in the year.
I'm just talking in general record.
I know. I'm just
record.
You're going to start seeing some of those guys back by the time the Seahawks play them.
True. That's true.
So
how about Los Angeles? A little bit of a surprise to me. 2-0. Los Angeles beat the Cowboys, the team we're facing next, 20-17 in the first week. Beat the Eagles, which is a team that is worse, it looks like now, than everyone assumed that they would be going into the year. They beat them 37-19.
The Eagles have looked terrible. And
bottom of the league, terrible.
Yeah, I mean, defensively they have not looked good at all. Offensively, they've really struggled. Carson Wentz has regressed. I mean, he's just throwing head scratching interceptions and all of that. And so I thought they were going to be a good team. I thought they were going to probably win their division, but now they don't look like they're going to be anything. And then the Cowboys, their defense looks, I think the right word for it is pathetic. But the offense is legit. And so the Rams defense is surprisingly competent given the players that they lost.
Yeah, the defensive secondary for Los Angeles is excellent so far, but their run defense is poor.
It is. But I expected their defense overall to be significantly worse than it has been. I have been impressed with some of the stuff they've been able to do.
I thought their offense was going to be worse than it has been, but overall they're running the ball well with Henderson, and they're passing great. I have to say, Goff's looked great the first couple games, but again, Cowboys and Eagles.
Yep. They've played two teams with no defense, so I'm not going to give Goff a lot of credit until I see him do it against a team that actually can play defense. And because what we saw last year was anyone with a decent defense just ate him alive. And so we'll see. I am not a Jared Goff believer. I never have been.
No, I'm not either. And I liked him at Cal, but other than that.
And last year, he showed me that he was just not a good player. He's
not a good enough player to carry a team.
Yeah. He has some great stats, but he's also done it against two of the worst defensive teams in the league. So we will see what he looks like down the road.
Yeah.
But you know what? They're still 2-0.
Yeah.
They're still on target. Like
all I know is
as a team,
in order to take
well.
This division, Seattle's going to have to keep winning. That's just the way it's going to be this year.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk Dallas, Seattle. So Dallas comes to town Sunday for an afternoon game. Dallas comes off a very improbable win against the Atlanta Falcons
one of
team
the greatest comebacks of all time.
I watched this game. I watched the second half of this game. And the first half, Dallas was all mistakes. So Dallas had 4 fumbles in the first quarter. They lost 3 of those. Atlanta led 29-10 at halftime. They were up by 15 points midway through the fourth quarter. And then Dallas decided to not give up, which was one of the greatest traits that you can have as a football team. And I admire Dallas for that because they didn't give up on this game. And Atlanta made every mistake that you can possibly make as a football franchise in the second half of the fourth quarter in order to give the game away. The Atlanta was the first team since 1933 to record at least 39 points and 0 turnovers and lose a game. 1933, first team out of thousands of games played. They are the first team to lose.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Defensively, they completely just fell apart. And really offensively, they tried so hard to end the game by running out the clock that they stopped trying to get first downs. They went, almost Schottenheimer last year, at it. And they just they beat themselves in terms of some dumb decision making.
Yeah, totally.
And the Cowboys took advantage. Dak Prescott made some incredible throws. CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper made some great catches.
They had some huge sustained drives of 75 yards, 74 yards, 75 yards, 76 yards, all resulting in touchdowns, not field goals. So that was very instrumental.
Yeah. And Atlanta just couldn't get off the fild. I mean,
the onside kick at the end was ridiculous. It was not a special onside kick. It was an average kick, and Atlanta just failed to
it was
cover that ball. They could have covered that ball. Was going so slow and like spinning on its side towards the 10-yard mark that it needed to go. It was just kind of sitting there rotating. And players were staring at the ball, waiting for it to move forward.
Because
Atlanta could have fell on that ball at any moment, and it would have been over.
When the ball was kicked, it looked like it was going to go 4 yards and die.
Peter out.
And so they're like, okay, we're just going to let it do that, because if it doesn't go 10 yards, the only way the Cowboys can recover is if one of us touch it. And so they're like, don't touch it, stay back, just leave it. Let the Cowboys down the ball, and we get the ball. And then it had all that spin, and it just took this right-hand turn and went from a ball that looked like it was only going to go 4 yards forward to one that suddenly was rolling right at that 10-yard mark. And you could see the Atlanta players panicking and not knowing, do I dive on it and take a chance of being the guy that touches it and lets the Cowboys have it? Or do we wait? Is it going to stop? They didn't know. But there was this look of panic on a lot of the Falcons.
Right.
And ultimately it crossed the line, and the Cowboys dove on it and got it. And, the Falcon players clearly had no clue what was going on there. When it was first hit, they were right to not want to touch it. But when it took that right-hand turn because of all the spin and started rolling at that 10-yard mark,
by then it was too late, because the Atlanta players had backed off too far.
That's
and,
the thing.
And the Dallas
off.
Cowboy dude was hovering right on the ball.
Yeah.
And so he was ready to pounce as soon as it
crossed the line. Yep.
That's all it took.
And so it was.
And that was the game.
Yeah.
I mean, they won 40-39 on a last-second field goal.
But that was, honestly, that was an incredible kick. I mean, it happened perfectly. And it's one of those things.
Did you see the way that they put that ball on the ground before he kicked it too? He just laid it flat on the ground without a tee and kicked the corner of it and let it do its thing.
Yep.
It was an interesting.
It's a soccer move right
there. Way to do it. Yeah. It's like anyway. So they come to town. Dak Prescott and company. Ezekiel Elliott had 22 carries, 89 yards. CeeDee Lamb is emerging as a rookie. Amari Cooper, they both had over 100 yards. Their tight end, Dalton Schultz, looked good at 9 receptions for 88 yards.
And a touchdown.
They're all offense, right? They're all an offense team. Their defense doesn't have anything. They don't have a secondary. They don't have a pass rush right now. And so I look for Seattle to keep scoring points, and our defense to just come up with just enough. I mean, it's just one of those, it's going to be the formula of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Seattle's going to score. It doesn't matter what defense they face. And can Seattle's defense do enough against whatever team we face to get the win? And I think that's the deal. And I think they do against Dallas.
I think that you can look at the fact that, the Bruce Irvin injury is going to put a more athletic, more dynamic player on the field in Jordan Brooks. And it's going to force Pete Carroll to play the guy who looks like their best pure pass rusher in Alton Robinson.
It's crazy how things work sometimes.
As good as Bruce Irvin is, and he's a very good player. And I know that some people don't like him, and for some reason there are fans that just don't think he's good, but he is a very good player. As good as he is, the defense might be better now that Alton Robinson and Jordan Brooks are taking his snaps, because both of those players are special athletes. And that might be what makes the difference.
In the long run, I think that might definitely help. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your kind of
Oh, I see. This
outlook for this thing.
This is going to be a shootout. I've got the Seahawks winning 34-31.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. Just an absolute shootout.
Yeah, I so want my team's defense to be better and hold teams down more than that. So I hesitate to give teams that many points against the Seahawks. But quite frankly, I don't know if it matters the way that Russell Wilson's playing.
It kind of doesn't.
I could easily see the Seattle putting up 40 points on this team or more. In a shootout kind of game where I think mistakes tail the tail in the end. And so it'll be interesting. I think it's going to be like 38 or 41 or 43 to like 27, something like that, or 26.
So you think the Seahawks are going to win an easier game? When, 38,
I think it's going to be like an Atlanta
38-27. I can see that. I can totally see that. I think that's definitely possible. But notice what we're talking about with the Seahawks offense. Like, we are just straight up just assuming they're going to score 30 or more points. And
yeah. It's going to take a special defense to slow down Russell Wilson this year.
There is zero reason, having watched Wilson and the rest of the offense play these first 2 weeks, and having watched the Cowboys defense play these first 2 weeks, there is zero reason to think that Wilson and the offense are not going to put up 30, 35, 38.
Baltimore Ravens defense kind of scares me a little bit, but anybody else doesn't really. Not against Wilson.
I would have said San Francisco 2 weeks ago.
That's true. But then again, look at what we did last year.
You lose, their best member of the secondary in Richard Sherman. They lost their best defensive lineman in Bosa. Their
in free agency as well.
Their fourth best defensive lineman in Solomon Thomas. So the one guy that that might come in and replace some of Bosa's production, they're both gone. That defense doesn't scare anyone anymore.
No.
They've still got good players. Eric Armstead's good. Kinlaw looks like he's really inconsistent, but when he flashes,
they're one of those teams, Keith, it's like a number 10 overall. I mean, they would have been number 2, 3, 4 defense overall. Mm-hmm. Now they're kind of like a number 10 defense overall, and they've got kind of a number 10 offense overall. So they're not terrible, but they're not special like they were last year, I don't think. And so I think Seattle has really turned the tail this year. Their offense is so good that I think it's going to win them tons of games this year. And anytime you have Russell Wilson to lead a last second drive or whatever, you're always going to come out favorably there. And so it's definitely Seattle's defense, Keith, that I'm worried about. And I don't know how worried I need to be about it yet because we just haven't played enough games. Yeah. And I want to see things tend to tighten up with Pete Carroll over time. And I'm hoping that that's true. And I'm hoping that maybe we go shopping a little bit here and we maybe bring a player in that we aren't thinking about yet. Maybe it is the guy we hate, we don't want to see on the team, but maybe that's what we need at this point. I don't know. But I think the team is one player away.
Yeah. They need a consistent pass rusher, someone that they know can get them, a few extra pressures where the guys that are on the team now just wouldn't get.
Well, I'd like to see Mayo. I'd like to see Alton Robinson take 20 snaps away from Mayo.
Yeah, I would like to see Mayo get an opportunity out there, and I want to see that. I want to see it happen. I think his first step is so quick.
We're talking Alton Robinson.
Alton Robinson. He has a chance to be special. He really does. And I want to see him get a chance to do it. And if he can, well,
a lot of folks, I went back and I looked at a lot of draft stuff this last week. I don't know why. I was just poking around and I was looking at Alton Robinson and I was looking at Darrell Taylor, and there were a lot of services that had Alton Robinson rated higher than Taylor,
because athletically he is better.
And
Alton
so I want to see that
Robinson-
on the field.
Alton Robinson dropped to the 5th round because of maturity issues, off-field
I
stuff.
hope
that kind of
maturity
stuff.
issues aren't a reason that he's not being activated right now.
Yeah, I mean,
And we just don't know because stuff like that doesn't get out.
yeah, I mean, we haven't heard any of that. If anything had happened where it had been, in the public domain,
Right.
it would have been.
He could be late for meetings. He could be cavalier attitude wise. Maybe hasn't bought in completely on.
I don't know.
That kind of stuff.
You wouldn't have heard Pete Carroll talk about how great he's looked. If any
I'm just
of that
looking
was
for
true.
reasons why they've held him back other than the veteran presence that have been in front of him, considering that he was getting starter reps in camp.
Mm-hmm. And now he looks like he may get starter reps in the regular season, thanks to the Irvin injury. And I'm here for it. I want to see what he does. I have high expectations for him. I think he can be very good.
So are we looking at a special year, Keith, or what?
Yeah, I was trying to find a team that kind of reminded me of this, and I kept going back to the Peyton Manning Colts teams that were great on offense and typically kind of terrible on defense.
They had Dwight Freiny, and that's it.
Yeah, they had that, Dwight Freiny, and then they had Bob Sanders at safety. And the two of them,
that's right.
The two of them were the only thing going for that team on defense. And everyone else was just mediocre. And they won a lot of games, and they won a Super Bowl. They could have won more had they had any defense whatsoever. But ultimately, they had two good defensive players. And then I look at Seattle and I go, okay, they've got more talent on defense than any of those Manning Indy teams.
It's true.
They lack it in a key spot, and that's the pass rush, but they still have significantly more talent, but the offense it's putting up numbers like those, and it has the potential.
It's hard because Seattle's going to go up in games, right? And so teams are going to be playing from behind. Mm-hmm. And so this is going to be an issue all season.
You're going to want you're gonna want a pass rusher. A couple years ago, they went and speaking of Dwight Freiny, they signed Dwight Freiny. After the start of the year, he was just sitting at home. They brought him in, they played him for a couple of games, and then ultimately they cut him, which was surprising to everyone because he had played okay, in his 15 snaps a game, but they needed a roster spot, and they thought, they let him go for a week and then bring him back, and he ended up going elsewhere. But it's not like they haven't done it before. I could see them looking for and finding someone who can come in and just give.
Is it Clay Matthews, Keith? Is it?
No.
I mean, he had 8 sacks last year on 13 games.
Yes, but
he's horrible.
What was the rest?
I don't like him.
What was the rest? He had 13 sacks. But what was the rest of his pass
13
rushes?
games, 8 sacks.
Sorry, 8 sacks, 13 games. What was the rest of his pass rush like? What was the rest of his...
I don't know.
He got home on 8 plays. But he didn't provide much pressure outside of those 8 plays. I just don't think he has anything left in the tank. And there are other options out there.
Not many.
Not many, but there are. And... pull someone out of retirement and get them in shape and all of that. I could see it. At some point, they are going to have to find a pass rusher. They just have to. If the offense is going to be putting up these kind of points, the other teams are going to be playing from behind. They're going to be throwing 40, 50 times a game, which is what we've seen these last 2 weeks. You got to have some extra pass rushers in there to get pressure and, make some plays.
All right. So after this next week, what do we do, Keith? We face in the Cowboys, and then it's the Dolphins. After that, we're traveling to Miami, so that'll be. And
the Dolphins have looked awful.
Yeah, they're about bottom feeder this year for sure. And after that, it's the Vikings at the Seahawks, and they haven't looked very good either. In fact, Kirk Cousins looked horrible.
Yeah. The Vikings have been a massive disappointment so far this year.
Good news for the Seahawks.
Yep.
Our schedule is looking actually better than it did at the beginning when we made the predictions, as far as teams.
Oh yeah, because we were like
better or worse or whatever.
The Eagles were one of those teams that were like, okay, that's a pretty good team. That could be a loss. And right now they just look awful. They just don't look like a good football team.
And the 49ers are having their challenges. Buffalo looks pretty good. Rams are looking a little stronger than maybe we thought they were.
If you think back to all the preseason and stuff, I told you that if Jared Allen could play, if Josh Allen could play good at quarterback, the rest of that roster was ready to win now. And guess what Josh Allen is doing?
Yeah, he's one of the highest rated quarterbacks last week.
Yeah, he has really stepped up and played well. Now I know people want to see it happen more than just a couple of weeks and more against awful defensive teams, which is he's played 2 bad defensive teams, but so far so good. He has stepped up and done what they needed to do, and if he continues to do that, if he continues to play well, Buffalo is a very dangerous team in the AFC.
I think that's who Arizona plays next too. That'll be interesting to see what they can do with those guys. Mm-hmm. All right, Keith, let's wrap this thing up. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening. Tell your friends and family and share the show. You can find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. I'm at NW Seahawk. The show is at Hawks Playbook on Twitter. SeahawksPlaybook.com has all of the podcasts on our own website, and you can find the show on your favorite podcast app and subscribe. And make sure you get that in your feed every week. Until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.